Yo, yo, it's time to discover the flow. Shout out to the bros. You know, I like to welcome everybody to discover the flow. No matter how you discover the show or discover the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for discover the flow. Yeah, cowabunga do. You know live is how we come to you. Turn the levels up when you hear the boys coming through. The Pod Squad giving you just what you need, hitting you with a new special guest every week. Don't you dare hit skip, man, it's Tristan and Kip. DTF Pod about to take you on a trip. Mega Ran bring the heat, yeah. But be clear, I wasn't even supposed to be here. Welcome to Discover the Flow. No matter how you discovered the show or discovered the bros, now you about to see how far we can go, because it's time for Discover the Flow. Let's start the show.
Creator economy, it's all good with me. So yeah, I'm a pretty chill guy, so I hope we have a fun conversation. Pretty relaxed.
So Amran Gowani, correct?
Amran Gowani.
Right? Yeah. Amran. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. And you wrote this.
I sure did.
As you can see, I'm in the process of reading.
Fantastic.
He's got my copy, so.
Yeah, they sent us one copy, but oh Jesus, dog.
That's our third host. He'll chime in every once in a while from now on. But
yeah.
So please, just for our guests, let everybody know who you are and what it is you do.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Amran Gowani, and I am on my fifth life as a novelist and full-time author. I started off way back when as a chemist. I was working on a PhD in organic chemistry. I said, actually, this isn't for me after all. I went to the pharmaceutical industry. I got an MBA. I went to work on Wall Street. I worked as a journalist. And I said, I hate all of this stuff, but I have a lot of thoughts about it. And I had a midlife crisis and started writing. And so Leverage is my first novel. And it's about a lot of the things that I observed over the experiences that I've accumulated over the last, say, 15 or 20 years in corporate America and on Wall Street. And I've always been kind of a comedian by nature. So I married all those things together and wrote this book that I hope is pretty entertaining for people.
I've started reading it, like I said, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. Never thought a financial thriller, I guess would be the best way to put it. Never really thought that was going to be in my wheelhouse of topics that I would read. But, and I honestly wouldn't have picked it up off the shelf. But given the fact that I've had the opportunity to read it, now I found a whole new genre that I actually enjoy.
That's great, and I appreciate that feedback. And I would only caution you that I'm not sure that other financial thrillers are going to be like Leverage. I mean, Leverage in a lot of ways is a social satire, first and foremost. And because I had the luxury or misfortune, however you might want to put it, of working on Wall Street, I got to see a lot of ridiculous behavior and financially perverse incentives that sat wrong with me. And so I was able to kind of take my natural personality, which is a satirical, sarcastic guy, and then marry my lived experiences to this world of Wall Street. And so I don't know. I joked with my publicist that I don't read financial thrillers myself. I read social satires. I read spy novels. I read, contemporary fiction. And I think I just took some of the elements of that genre and I said, but I think I can do that in this world of Wall Street and make it work. And so hopefully I've done that. And it sounds like so far so good.
It reads in a lot of ways to me. It reads like, Billions.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of the aspects of what I've gotten to so far. At least I haven't gotten anywhere near the end of the book yet, but from what I can tell, Ali Jafar reads like a character off of something like Billions. Not necessarily one of the top guys in the company, but one of the high-end traders.
For sure. And so, a little bit of backstory there. So I don't know how much you guys know about this, so bear with me. But Billions is based off of the hedge fund titan Stephen Cohen. And so the character of Axe is based off Stephen Cohen. Stephen Cohen owns the Mets. He ran this firm called SAC Capital, and then he pivoted it to a family fund, and then now he's back in the game. And so, it's well established, or that he was basically running a huge insider trading ring, and that's how he, drove his hedge fund to outperform the market, year after year after year for decade after decade. And there's some like big name people like Preet Bharara and like some of these like kind of political names that you hear were involved in the kind of hunt to take down Stephen Cohen in the mid 2010s. And so Billions was written by Andrew Ross Sorkin, and that was basically like his spin on the hunt for Stephen Cohen. And so Leverage in a lot of ways is my spin on the hunt for Stephen Cohen, which kind of takes elements of Billions, takes elements of this book called Black Edge by Sheila Kolhatkar, which is the definitive tale of the FBI and the DOJ's hunt for Stephen Cohen. And, I just kind of said, how can I make this more entertaining and funnier? And so we can still get the inside look at Wall Street, but we can do it in a way that's more of a social satire about the characters involved and less so about the kind of machinations on Wall Street. The machinations on Wall Street are, a virtue that happened by virtue of it being set on Wall Street, but ultimately it's a character study of this guy, Ali Jafar, and the kind of maniacs and sociopaths that he encounters in his time at this hedge fund.
Now, you said that you spent a lot of time on Wall Street, and that informs some of this character and some of the interactions here. I'm just curious because I know nothing about Wall Street. I know nothing about the hedge fund world and trading and all that stuff. Is it really that racist, for lack of a better term? I mean, no. I know it's a boys' club. I get that. That's a lot of industries are, but wow.
Yeah. And so I just want to be clear. I worked on Wall Street. I worked in an investment bank, and the book is set in a hedge fund. So, this is a story. It's made up. It's fictionalized. What I did more is I took real experiences that I had, suffering racism, suffering discrimination, and that I didn't necessarily experience on Wall Street, and I put them into the world of Wall Street. The racism that's in the book is obviously escalated for dramatic experience. Dramatic value. I also think that there's one question that I would encourage readers to think about as they read the book is that are the villains in this hedge fund, are they actually racist, or are they just using racism and racist slights against poor Ali as a way to keep him in check, like just a way to put him down? Like, do they feel white supremacy in their heart, or are they just using this because it's an easy cudgel for them to beat on him with? And I think that's an interesting question. I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I do what the characters told me to do. And so, I got when I created the story, I just got the sense that this world of Prism Capital, that's the hedge fund that is the setting for Leverage, that in this place, because Al's different, they're going to really pound on him, and there's no rules, and they're really going to just lean in on all of this kind of really debauched behavior. Now, all that is to say, when I worked at an investment bank out in San Francisco, the racism is real, but it's more tacit. Like people are saying the quiet part out loud now here in 2025, but in the 2010s, in the Obama era, and the kind of like, the post-racial reconciliation world, they were thinking it, but not saying it. And now people are saying the quiet part out loud again. But like, even in San Francisco at an investment bank, progressive San Francisco, we have 9 senior analysts in the firm. They're all white guys. And then the only minorities and women are the junior people. And, they're the ones basically eating shit. Not necessarily with racial slurs, but with the extra work and with the grunt work and with the shitty jobs. And so, so it's a real thing. I think it was more tacit at the time that I personally experienced, but I don't think that there's any doubt about it that there are places on the Wall Street and in Silicon Valley where, you can see some really ugly behavior. And I think that is exacerbated now in the kind of like political and cultural climate that we're in.
Yeah, America got a little weird for a while when Obama became president, because everybody that came out of the bushes were all like, "Oh, can we say it now?" And then Trump became president. They were like, "Now we can definitely say it."
Yeah.
So like things got weird for a while. They were like, "No, that's not what that means," But I also look at it as the possibility with your character that you were talking about is maybe they were using racism because they felt threatened by him and wanted to demoralize him and try to like break him down and hold him back. You know what I mean?
100%. And I can't prove that people did that to me because I'm not in their heads, but I mean, I feel like that's happened to me in my life, like where, I'm humbly speaking, like I'm a competent guy. I'm not going to say, and talented is a dicey word, but I'm a competent guy. Like you ask me to do something, I do it. I do a good job. And I think, that can be threatening, right? Like this guy's coming for my job. This guy's coming for my paycheck. And I think that I definitely experienced, in all different industries, in the world of organic chemistry PhD student, in the pharmaceutical industry, in Wall Street. I've experienced like, kind of like, let's slap this guy down a little bit to make sure he doesn't, get too high on his own supply.
I mean, we're two middle-aged white guys in the Midwest in America, so it's not like it's something we experience very often. So we can never say, I understand what you're going through to somebody, but we see it, so we know it happens,
Yeah, and I think what's one thing that, I'm actually a mixed race guy, so I'm half Pakistani, half Caucasian, just like the character in the novel, and that was something that I feel like I could really speak to, and it's something I really wanted to interrogate. So Kip, when you get deeper into the book, you're gonna there's a really, one of my favorite passages in the novel is kind of Ali in his internal monologue exploring what it means to be mixed race when you're basically, raised as a white guy, which is more or less my life. I was raised by Caucasian people in a all Caucasian household because, my dad was from Pakistan, but I never met him. And so like, I grew up basically thinking like, oh yeah, I'm just like everyone else. And then you get into the world and they're like, they don't treat you like everyone else. And you're like, ooh, okay, yikes. And then of course, there's a gradation here where like, I'm not going to say I've been treated as badly as like African Americans or like, Hispanic people, but I've shared definitely some similar experiences, but I know that there's even a continuum of how bad it can get. And I'm not saying that I've experienced the worst that this country has to offer by any means, but I have experienced some of it. And I wanted to explore that in the novel and through the characterization.
What I obviously can't speak to the racial aspect of the interactions in the book. What I can speak to, though, and something that I picked up on and kind of leads off of what Tristan was saying there and yourself, it's the class system that's there. It's obviously the owners of the hedge fund are way up here. They're at the top of the food chain, and the character is somewhere down in the middle here. And I've experienced people who think they're better than you. Let's put it that way. I think that's the best way that I can put it. And that kind of resonated for as far as I've gotten. That kind of resonated with me, where they're pushing him down further because he's less than them. He's lower on the food chain. He's lower on the totem pole. So they're just going to step on him as much as they can.
For sure. And that's definitely something that's interrogated. And I know, it's tricky because sometimes well-meaning people will say it's not a race thing, it's a class thing. And it's like, okay, but it's both actually. And there's still a gradation there. Right. And so, if your options are you can be a poor white guy in America or you can be a poor black guy in America, you're still going to want to be a poor white guy versus a poor black guy. Right. And so I think that's just, we have to be realistic about that. But to your point, like there is a class issue too, like these kind of blue blood guys where their, great grandfather was, genociding the Native Americans, and then he was accumulating wealth that way. And then before then they were owning slaves. And it's like, okay, so you guys accumulated a lot of wealth and you were in powerful positions in society, generation after generation after generation, you accumulate a lot of wealth. Like you didn't have anything to do with that. Like, I don't want to vilify you because you might've had an advantage. It's actually up to you to look inside yourself and say, I'm not better than the average guy who didn't get the same opportunities as me, or the same woman that didn't get the same opportunities as me. It's like the onus is on the people that think they're better than them to convince themselves they're not better. The onus is not on us lowly people to convince them that we're as good as them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
You're muted.
Sorry, I accidentally muted myself there. A question about the book, though. Mm-hmm. Well, the book as compared to real life. So Ali Jafar is a broker who loses $300 million from his hedge fund overnight, right? And it's said that he's forced to embrace deeply unethical practices to make up for his perceived loss. Is this something you've seen in the real world where people, I mean, obviously not losing 300 million, but like people just in an attempt to get ahead or because of a loss or out of desperation, people using unethical practices to be like, well, this is easier to go through this door than this door.
I mean, in the same way that is in the novel Leverage, I mean, I've not seen that personally. I think that's where you have to kind of create a fictional world that's more dynamic, that's a little more exciting. But if you watch Billions, if you read Black Edge, I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of the way these hedge funds were set up, in the 2010s and still to this day, is you have different teams and they're more or less competing with each other. And so, your performance is going to determine your bonus and your promotion capability and all those things. And so you have a pretty big incentive to cheat. And if your goal is to beat a benchmark, which is like, let's say you're working in the technology sector and you have the NASDAQ tech ETF and your benchmark is to beat that. Well, math says you're not going to beat that. Like randomness and probability say you're not going to beat that. So the only way to beat that is to get more certainty. And the only certainty is inside information. And so you're going to have a pretty big incentive to do that. And that's just, we see that all across Wall Street. And so then in the novel Leverage, what I did is I just imagined kind of like an underworld where that's just kind of an industry. And then, that might be true. Like there might be people just blatantly trafficking information, just like in Leverage. I mean, I've never done it myself, so I made it up. That doesn't mean it's not happening. I mean, one of the things that I say to a lot of people is that when they tell me that things that happen in Leverage are unrealistic, I'm like, are you looking at the news? Because there's literally nothing that I could invent that is unbelievable to me. I mean, like a South African immigrant like seized control of the government and just deconstructed the federal bureaucracy for a few months. Like that seems unbelievable to me, but then it happened. And so,
I mean, anybody who's paid attention to CNN or Fox News over the last 5 to 10 years will see all these politicians that are talked about who have these amazing portfolios and $200 million in the bank. And you're like, well, where'd you get the information for that? Come on. That's got to be insider trading. And then I always imagine that fiction like this is the volume turned up on reality. You know what I mean?
I listened to a couple of your guys' past episodes, and my understanding is you guys both have pro wrestling background, right? And so I'm a big pro wrestling fan. Or I don't watch as much these days, but I grew up on it. I watched a lot, Attitude Era and all that stuff. And Steve Austin, I used to listen to his podcast all the time, and he said that the best pro wrestling characters where your real personality turned up to volume 11. And that's what Leverage is. Mm-hmm. It's the real world turned up 100%. To volume 11. That's what it is.
See, that's what I'm getting out of the book so far. It's very much, it feels like you know what you're talking about, obviously. I mean, you've had the experience, you know what it is, but some of the situations are just a little over the top for what I would assume a day-to-day.
And I think they're over the top until they happen, right? Because I mean, you just got to follow the headlines long enough. I mean, for example, go ahead.
You can't deny Ponzi schemes exist, and these insider trading is a thing. People have been convicted of it. It has to exist.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like one of the more recent examples is there was this company in Germany called Wirecard, and it was basically the European equivalent of PayPal. And it was like, their tech darling, and it was going to put the European tech sector on the map. And it was based in Germany. And basically this company, and again, you have to fact check the actual market cap, but the market capitalization of this company was traded on the German stock exchange was like 20 to 30, maybe even $40 billion. And the whole thing was a house of cards, just completely made up. They faked all the accounting. They faked all the numbers. They faked everything. The management was in league with Russian oligarchs and like Russian spies, and like it's just utter chaos. Like you wouldn't even believe it if you tried, and yet it happened in real life. Within the last say 10 years. And there's a great book called Money Men that was written by Dan McCrum, he's a journalist at the Financial Times, and he did all the investigative work over a number of years to finally pull the thread that unraveled the whole company. And so like there's crazy stuff that happens in the quote real world, and so there's really nothing that I wouldn't believe.
Just to chime in there, before the scandal broke with Wirecard's market capitalization, it reached a peak of 24 billion euro, which is approximately 27 billion US dollars.
Yeah.
That's wild.
That's a lot of investors having, in pension funds and banks just holding on to stuff that literally goes to zero in an instant when they realize that there's nothing behind this.
And they were considered one of Germany's top companies as well.
Yeah, like they were the tech darling. They were like, Europe's, they were the champion that they said, we're going to be able to compete with Silicon Valley. We're going to show that we can develop a tech champion that can, dominate the globe. And it was just all BS.
Smoke and mirrors.
Oh man, it's. I like interviews like this because it's something I'm very uneducated on, and that's always been the point of this podcast, is to help other people learn about different things and learn more about sides of stuff that we never knew or that we thought we knew, or the misconceptions. You know what I mean? And it's a great thing. But 27 billion US dollars is just wild.
It's a lot of money.
Was that all just lost?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is that when the company was, because they were under the microscope for a long time, and so there was like the bulls and the bears. There were the people that were certain the company was a fraud and they were kept shorting it and losing money, and then there were the true believers that were like, you guys just don't understand how great this business is and how great this management is. And eventually, when the smoking gun is found and it's undeniable that this company is a house of cards, then the shares are basically delisted. And anything that you had in your portfolio is effectively worth zero. I mean, that's just poof, gone, magic.
Jeez.
And like, not to be all, politicize everything, but like, I'm really scared, and I think people should be really afraid of Bitcoin. Like all the, you can buy Bitcoin, you can treat it like a digital asset. It's freedom, it's a free market, you can do whatever you want. But Bitcoin is one of these things that like, it has no intrinsic value other than what people want to pay for it. And if one day everyone decides actually this thing's worthless, then everyone's portfolio is going to go to zero. And that's scary. Like that's the kind of thing that could cause a financial crisis, and something that I'm kind of curious about and I'm learning about myself.
And these people that are creating Bitcoin, they're creating these currencies, these cryptocurrencies that they didn't exist yesterday. And now all of a sudden there's one, and we're valuing it at this much. And why? Why are you valuing it at that much? What is it about the fact that some guy's computer found this little bit of information? Like, cryptocurrency terrifies me because it makes no sense.
As well, it should. I mean, and I don't like to be like a hater. I mean, I'm kind of a hater by nature, but if it had a useful application, I would be like, sure, yeah, this sounds interesting. But I mean, I've read up on it, and I there's really no application of it as a currency. The best thing you can do with it is launder money and obfuscate transactions to buy weapons or traffic humans or other really awful things. And so, yeah, I mean,
I hate saying it, but that's probably what it was invented for in the first place.
Probably.
Well, it has to be.
Probably. And Kip, to your point about the, these currencies that emerge from nowhere, I mean, they're done as just clear pump and dump scams, right? Like I made a currency, I generate some hype either using like a bunch of bots, or I get my buddies to pump it up, and then we buy the supply demand phenomenon makes the price skyrocket. And then we know when we're going to do a coordinated sell, we sell, we take all the profit, and then everyone else is left holding the bag. I mean, it's just like, it's an out and out scam. And if the government, the current administration, and again, I don't want to be politicize everything, but the current administration just doesn't care to prosecute this stuff. In fact, they did it themselves. So like, they don't care. And so,
God help me for even bringing it up. But I mean, even the Hawk Tuah girl had her own thing, and it went south for her.
For sure. And I mean,
why the hell does she need a Bitcoin?
Right. Well, she did it because she probably I don't know her personally, obviously, and I don't know if she's a good person or not, but like, somebody told her like, hey, here's a quick cash grab. And it was clearly a pump and dump. And whether, she might get in a lot of trouble for it, but she also might walk because there are no rules these days.
Cryptocurrency just sounds like a Ponzi scheme, another Ponzi scheme. It's just a modern day Ponzi. It's let me take all of your money and put it into this, and then I'm going to take all that money out, and it looks like it's just weird.
It's crazy, and I want to say one other thing just to your point about how do you value things. Like I actually wrote a newsletter post a long time ago that I still think is one of the better things I've written. And from my experience on Wall Street, there's all these financial models, there's all these sophisticated techniques, there's all these comparables analysis and discounted cash flow and net present value and blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, what something's worth is what someone's willing to pay for it. That's what something's worth.
True.
It's like, and Bitcoin is no different than a Beanie Baby or an old comic book or a baseball card. Those things have no intrinsic value. Like a Mickey Mantle rookie card is worth tens of millions of dollars because the market will pay tens of millions of dollars for it. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper that's 75 years old or whatever. So,
correct me if I'm wrong. Is that just back to supply and demand?
Yep, everything's always back to supply and demand. Economics is always supply and demand, and prices are always plus supply and demand. I mean, one of the things that is really misunderstood about the stock market is just the stock prices are just set with supply and demand. You know, when people all want to buy a stock at one time, then the price goes up, and when people all want to sell a stock at the one time, the price goes down. And that's why, you know, what happens, like say when a company has bad news and like something really bad happens to them, what happens is there are no buyers at the price that they used to exist. Like let's say that, you know, I was running a tech company and I was just making it all up, and like the stock of my fake tech company was trading at $100 a share, and everyone figures out that I'm a con artist, and now everybody holding the stock at $100 per share yesterday wants to unload it, but nobody's willing to buy it at more than $2 a share today. So the price just automatically drops $98 a share. You can't find some idiot willing to take it at 98 because the supply demand isn't there. And so like with Wirecard, you know, that's what would have happened if they even opened trading. I'm pretty sure they just delisted it. They said this is fake. And so now it's worth zero. But, you know, real companies, like I used to work in the biotech sector, and, you know, biotech companies are all valued on like the future cash flows of their clinical trial hitting. So, you know, they could be, you know, legitimate bona fide companies running a real clinical trial, and your clinical trial busts, and now the future value of your company is zero. And so what happens is the stock will drop, you know, upwards of 95% overnight. And it just traded whatever the cash on the balance sheet is. And everyone's kind of looking at this and saying, there's no path forward now. It's just this is on its way to liquidation. So the only value in the company is just whatever cash the company has on its balance sheet. And that's something that happens in the stock market, you know, pretty much daily.
You know, what's the other thing about all this that scares me is that all this electronic money and the cryptocurrency and everything, it's not there. What happens if the internet goes down tomorrow? What happens if somebody hits it? What are they called? EMPs or something like that?
Yeah.
Electromagnetic pulse. What happens if there's one of those bursts from the sun that knocks out our grid? There's no money. And yet, this day and age, let's be honest, I don't know about you guys, when I have physical cash on me, I almost feel uncomfortable. Like I have to use it first before my credit card or anything.
For sure.
Like it's a terrible feeling.
I am 100% the same way. You know, I turned 45 in about 5 weeks, and I haven't carried cash in any material way since 1999. I have been using credit cards.
It burns a hole in your pocket.
It does. It scares me because I'm like, this is just something I can lose, and then I've lost value, you know. And so, you know, the whole, you know, now I don't want to derail a conversation getting really in the weeds with wonkiness, but the entire financial system is based on trust. You know, we have to trust that the money is going to be where we said it was, that the money is going to be on the balance sheet at the banks, like we said, that because the banks don't actually have all the physical cash that's, you know, on the balance sheets of all the different consumers. They don't have that much cash printed. It's just a promise. And so with the problem with Bitcoin is it's a promise, but there's nobody backing it. And it's like, so like you said, if the Bitcoin, the ledger disappears, and I don't know how that would happen. I'm not an expert in this, but like, let's just say the ledger's corrupted and, you know, it doesn't work anymore. Well, then everything on it is worth zero. And so there's no FDIC insurance on that. There's no promise that you're going to get your money back. You have no confidence that that's a sustainable thing. And so, you know, it's the same thing with like, you know, I used to joke that like people want to hoard gold in the apocalypse times. And I'm telling you, like, gold's not going to be very valuable. Bullets and guns are going to be valuable if we're in the wasteland. And so if you really wanted to stockpile something valuable, stockpile some weapons. And I'm not encouraging people to become, you know, preppers or anything, but like, kidding aside, I mean, like, you know, a digital currency like Bitcoin that people are buying to say, this is my hedge for the end of the world scenario. I'm like, in the end of the world scenario, we're not going to have internet. You're not going to have anyone to transact with that thing. So it's actually worthless. Like, it's not doing what you think it does.
Yeah. When we end up back in a barter system.
Exactly.
See, but yeah, we end up going back to a barter system, and it's what is valuable at that time to those people. Again, it comes back to supply and demand. Mm-hmm. I have all the food. You're going to come to me and bring me guns and bullets to trade for food. You're going to bring me clothes, your water, whatever, you know, and that's what's valuable. That's in that situation. That's what's valuable.
100%. I mean, obviously, like, you know, we don't want to go back to the barter system because as corruptible as capitalism is, you know, capitalism has increased the wealth and the quality of lives of lots of people. It's just capitalism is subject to perverse incentives. And so a lot of what I explore in Leverage and a lot of what I write about in my newsletter and, my comedy that I do on my social media is just saying, hey, like it's too simple to be like capitalism is evil, but it's not inappropriate to say that capitalism is subject to a lot of flaws and needs a lot of regulations so that people can be protected from predatory things like Ponzi schemes and Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera.
It's funny for someone to say capitalism is evil, because guess what? We created it. It doesn't matter what the story is, no matter what you're looking at, whether it's Leverage or The Walking Dead. Like, there's potential threats in every story of every form of fiction. But people, human beings, they're always the most dangerous threat, whether they're presented that way or not.
Yeah, I mean, I write almost exclusively. I mean, this is my first novel. I did take a stab at another book before that. That's kind of how I learned to write. So it's not published and it's not going to be published anytime soon. But my joke is that I write about people because people are the scariest things I can imagine. Like I don't really write in the sci-fi. I mean, I'm not averse to it. It's like the idea of humans navigating the modern world is the most compelling, interesting, scary thing I can think of. And so that's what I write about.
Well, and sci-fi, a lot of the sci-fi and all that stuff, it's all just allegory for the human condition anyway. So it's the unknown of humanity, and what are people capable of when faced with something they've never seen before. And
exactly.
Yeah, so it's all about the human condition. That's all. Pretty sure that's all writing is.
Earlier, you said that you used to be a journalist, right?
Yeah, it was a weird stint. So that's a generous interpretation, but I did do some bona fide journalism, so I can talk about that.
Well, what were you doing before you came back to writing in general?
Yeah. So my history with journalism is kind of interesting. So, way back when I was a high school kid, when I went to college, I was like, I had two paths in mind. I was going to do chemistry or journalism. And like, those were the two things I liked the most. And even in 1999, the 19-year-old version of me was like, well, journalism is screwed, so let me get a chemistry degree instead. And so, but I always liked to write, so there was an intrinsic desire to write. I always liked sports journalism. I was always a sports fan. And so, I was always writing in the background, just a creative thing, even just sending a funny email to my buddy or, always reading. And basically when I got to my post MBA world and I got to investment bank, I was doing sell side equity research and essentially just writing the buy, sell, hold reports. So in a lot of ways, it's a writing job. It's actually more of a media job than a finance job because, you're I don't want to bore you with all the details, but like, you're kind of like a networked personality basically. And you got a lot of masters to please. And ultimately your bread and butter is your research that you write. And so that was kind of like what got me back interested in writing. Honestly, it was that I was able to write for money, via the banking industry. And so when I say I was a journalist, what happened is after my 3-year stint at the investment bank and we had our first kid and I said, this is not for me. I'm not going to, break my back doing this work that I don't even think is that interesting or valuable. I went over to work for a business intelligence company and I was mostly hired in to do like data analytics and analysis and like bring my financial expertise to that company. But they were a small little outfit and they said, hey, you can write. And so, go interview people. And so then I de facto became a journalist for like a business publication for a short stint. And so I did work as a bona fide journalist with, my journalistic integrity, and more or less I was doing the same job I did on Wall Street for journalist pay. And I was like, well, that's not going to work for me. And so, so that was one of the reasons that I stepped out of that role and became a full-time stay-at-home dad. And then while I was doing that, I just started putzing around with fiction on the side and said, hey, I actually really like this. And that's how that's how we got here.
Man, between the chemistry and the journalism, you were one spider bite away from being Spider-Man.
There you go.
So you got the journalism bug, you got the writing bug. So you got the time, you got to go home and write and be around family. What motivates you in your writing process? Like me, I seem like I like to write as well. I wrote my first book about 2 years ago. I seem to write best after a long day when I'm kind of a little agitated and worn out, and I've had ideas floating in my head all day, and I can just flood them all onto the page. Like, what works best for you? Is it a late at night thing? Is it early day?
Yeah, in terms of process, so I'm married and my wife is the breadwinner in my house, and I'm always acknowledge that the reason I even have a chance to write is because my wife has a real job, and so then we have two kids, and so I'm the primary caregiver at home, and our kids are 9 and 6, so they're not as they're more independent now, but basically like my best writing sessions happen when I wake up at 2:30 in the morning and I can't sleep because I just have too many ideas, and I get up and I start writing at 3 o'clock in the morning and I finish at 6. And from 3 a.m. to 6, I'm just in the zone, man. It's dead quiet. No one's on social media. No one's emailing me. No one's screaming at me. I don't have to wash any dishes. It's like, it's just pitch black. It's really quiet. I can put some electronic music on if I want, and I can just immerse myself in the fictional world. And like, that's when I have my most productive sessions. And so Leverage was predominantly written in that, middle of the night window. And so I tend to be the most active there. Now, that was just for that last book. I'm always, trying to experiment and optimize my situation, and my kids' schedules are always changing, et cetera, et cetera. When I wrote my first book that's not published, I finished the most of it during the height of the pandemic in 2020. And so in that time, I was writing from 8 p.m. to midnight, and I was just going gangbusters. And I wrote like 80,000 words in like 6 months. And it was just a really productive window for me. And I think that's when I really like figured out how to do it. I mean, like I said, that book's not up to snuff for traditional publishing, but that's when I was like, okay, I know how to do this now. And then I pretty quickly, I took that book out. I couldn't get an agent, but I said, I really like this and I'm going to give it another shot. I jumped into Leverage, and Leverage just worked right from the start because I had learned a lot about the process of writing and what works for me and how to immerse myself. And so I tend to find this off windows where it's really quiet, it's dark. That's where I can really immerse myself in the fictional world and just kind of let the characters come to life.
I feel like I need a little bit of a crunch when I'm writing. Like I know I've got 2 hours of peace before people come home, or I'm at work and I got a half-hour lunch break, and I'm like, ooh, I'm not hungry, but I'm inspired. You know what I mean? Like that. I feel like that's something that works very well for me.
Yeah, and and obviously I write a lot of different things. I perform some comedy stuff on social media. I write a newsletter that's been pretty popular over the years. I pitch short form pieces to the New Yorker that get rejected, and then I write my novels. And I think every style of writing is a little different. So when my most productive like fiction sessions, and I'm trying to write a novel, and I'm trying to really immerse myself in the fictional world and get into the minds of the characters, then that's when I really need that quiet in that window of time. Like I don't do well with just like, I got 20 minutes to work on this scene. I really need to get in the zone for something like that's that deeper work. But with my newsletter and social media, like, yeah, man, I'm just constantly pounding the keyboard. I think I'm one of those rare writers that writes more than they read. And I don't advocate, I just do whatever works for you. Like some people will swear like you should be reading twice as much as you write, whatever. I don't care about that stuff. If you're writing and you're productive, then you're doing it right. And so I tend to pound the keyboard a lot and revise my pieces a lot and play around with a lot of different pieces at one time. And so like when I'm doing the shorter form pieces or something that's a little bit more quick hit, yeah, I move around the schedule and I move around my interviews or podcasts or working with my marketing team at Atria, and then I'll just jump in short windows and write. But when I really feel like I need to immerse myself to get the deeper fiction writing done.
Question about Leverage. Ali is a high finance trader, right?
Yeah, so he's what's called a buy side analyst. There's a lot of jargon, but basically he's the guy who kind of does the research, and then he would pitch his ideas to the portfolio manager, and then the portfolio manager would say, yeah, we're going to invest in that, or no, we're not.
Is that generally what like the average day of what a real high finance trader would be?
Yeah, I mean, I caution trader is more like what the banks do. The hedge funds, depending on how big they are, they do their own proprietary trading, and a lot of that is evolved over time, especially with like these algorithmic trading. And this is stuff that's beyond my expertise because I haven't worked in that function. But if you read like some of the later Michael Lewis books, and you kind of follow, like if you read the Financial Times, they did a whole series on these like massive hedge fund titans that are basically soaking up all the trading volume that investment banks used to do. So people use trader to kind of describe what Al does, but he's actually not a trader. He's what you'd call an analyst. So he's doing the fundamental research that's saying, hey, here's a sector we want to invest in. And so we got to get to know all the players in the game. We got to know what their financial forecast looks like, what their product portfolios look like, what the competition looks like, what markets they're in globally. So like this is a really holistic analysis that then you would put together a financial pitch and then take that to your portfolio manager. And then your portfolio manager typically in these funds would manage a group of multiple analysts, and then they kind of that's where the analysts start competing against one another, right? And that's where the kind of like incentive to break the rules starts to come in, because it's like, well, I want the portfolio manager to invest in my ideas so that I can get my big bonus of the year at the end of the year. So I have an incentive to then go get something that's basically, I know, hint hint, is going to work, is going to pan out, and that could be, illegal information, for example.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, that was a long answer to your simple question. I'm not sure if I just...
No, we're Kevin Smith.
We're learners.
Yeah, we
We
live
like to
on
learn
long
about things we don't
answers.
know, so
Yeah.
that's actually quite fascinating to me.
Yeah.
No, but no. Is your book that you said you haven't published, without giving away too much, like what's that one about? Like what's stopping it?
Yeah. So I mean, what's stopping it is it's too long. And that's like a harsh reality and a harsh truth that I had to bump into when I started writing was, I joke that the book's not good. I actually don't know if it's any good. I know that it's too long. And I know that when I queried literary agents, they looked at the word count and they're just like, get out of here. Like, you obviously don't understand the marketplace. And so hardly anybody even looked at the book in the traditional publishing. It's possible that if I kicked it over to someone, they'd be like, hey, this is really good. But I tell you, but no matter what, they're still not going to publish it 120,000 words. And that's the kind of like prosaic, simple thing that you don't think about when you're doing your art, is that the publisher doesn't want to publish a 120,000 word book because it's going to cost more to print all those pages, and then that's going to eat into the margin on the book. And so that's not a good, it's like, we can sell one widget at 90,000 words versus another widget at 120. We're going to sell the 90,000 word widget because that's going to be cheaper to produce, and then we're going to make more money on the $30 hardcover price. So that's something I should have known, with my background in finance and my MBA and all that jazz. But it's just something you didn't really think about. And so my first book, so that's just a little bit of kind of esoterica there, but the first book was really was about a more... So if Leverage is about kind of like the kind of just the perverse nature of Wall Street as an entire ecosystem. The first book didn't have a good title, candidly. I would tell you, I just never could come up with a title, which I think was a bad sign as well. But that book was more of a specific insider trading situation that happened. And it was a panoramic view of how inside information can be kind of illicitly passed from academia to a corporate to a corporate pharmaceutical company, to ultimately a hedge fund, and then how it can then be used to create ill-gotten gains. And so basically Leverage does that like 20 times. The first book was more of like a really deep introspection of like how that system of passing information happens at a micro level. And it was more character driven. So there were more characters. It's actually, again, I think there's some really great stuff in that book. I think the characters were actually pretty compelling, and without, giving away too much, because this is the book that I'm currently working on. I have basically stolen a couple of characters from my first book, retconned their background a little bit, and brought them into my new project, because I do think they're great characters, and I think that they have a lot of potential. And I don't want to just be like, well, they live in this book that doesn't exist. I mean, I can modify their background and bring them to life in a different story, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun, actually.
So I kind of want to change gears when he's done here. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Say your thing.
No, I was just going to say I've done that myself, where I've thought something was a great idea, or I've loved a character, and I've been like that, but it doesn't fit here. But I'm not going to let it go to waste. You just kind of hold on to that, and then it's like those guys with the giant shed full of wires and bolts and parts and this and that. You're like, I know I'm going to need this lampshade somewhere 10 years down the line, or I know this bundle of wire is going to come in handy someday.
It's the famous idiom, kill your darlings, and I think that I like save your darlings. So I think you definitely, there are times when you have a great piece of prose or like a great character, and you need to remove them from the story to make the story work. But like I do that. I just put it in my OneNote drive. And sometimes I go through and I just kind of peruse through like all the stuff that I cut out of other things that I've written. I'm like, hey man, that's a hell of a line. I'm going to steal that and put it somewhere else.
So I kind of want to switch gears a little bit and go to the nuts and bolts of writing and that and publishing and things like that. Now, you are a traditionally published writer, which means that you have an agent, you have a publishing house that is publishing your book. How do you get to that point as a writer? Like, what were the steps that you took to get published? Essentially, I know a lot of people that self-publish. I have a couple of friends that have self-published books the right way, as opposed to going through a vanity publisher. But if somebody wanted to become traditionally published, what's the steps that they would have to take to do that? Since you did it.
Yeah, no, it's a lot more difficult business than people even realize. As hard as you've heard it is, it's even more difficult than you realize. So I write a lot of satire, and like I have a post that I wrote on my newsletter a long time ago, like how to get a Big 5 book deal. And I always joke that step one is find someone to bankroll you, because you're not going to make any money for a long time. And so my wife is my angel investor, right? So because she is doing nicely in her career, and I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, then I had the financial backing to be like, how do I figure out how to do this and then make it happen? Because it is a long process. So all kidding aside, like make sure you've got some financial stability, either like a grant, a fellowship, a spouse to help you out, a full-time job. Like you got to have some money, because you're not, even if you have a success, like objectively, I have a great success with leverage. Like I got a Big 5 publishing house to publish the book. They gave me a pretty good advance. It was still not enough to live on over the duration of time that it took me to write this book. And if it goes supernova in the marketplace, then sure, then I could say I could make a living from it. But like it could be a flop. Publishing is a very tricky business. And so first and foremost, like find a stable source of income that enables you and empowers you to create your art. And I say that as humbly and seriously as possible. Okay. Now, with that said, if you want to be traditionally published and you're not, the son or the daughter of the person who runs the publishing house, you need a literary agent. And so getting a literary agent is like one of the most exclusive, challenging things to do. Like there's not many of them out there, and there's so much demand for them. And so you need to sign with a literary agent, because they become the broker that takes your book to the traditional publishing house. Now, if you want to self-publish, you don't need an agent. If you want to publish through certain small independent presses, you don't need an agent. If you want to go to a Big 5 publishing house, you have to have a literary agent. So what you do is you query the agents. Basically, that means if you're writing fiction, you have to have your novel has to be done, and it has to not suck. And then you have to write a query letter, which is like, some people say it's even harder than writing the novel itself, because it's essentially like a marketing pitch that you have to distill the essence of your novel into 300 words, and you have to talk about why you're the right person and why the market conditions are right, and you have to have great comps. You have to all these key elements of a query letter that then somehow also stands out from the other 20,000 people querying literary agents every month. And so you're in a really competitive, we talked about supply demand. You're in a pool where there's a lot of supply. And so it's really tough right off the bat. So what I did is I went the old school way. I just queried literary agents, cold querying, where you just email them their email address and you follow all their little specific directions. And I just cold pitched agents. And when I did that with my first book, they told me to, basically get out of here. Like this book, they just didn't even respond. And that was clearly a sign that there's something wrong with the project I'm querying. When I queried leverage and I started to triangulate to the kind of right agents that would be interested in my project, they just were emailing me back like 2 days later saying like, yeah, send me the book. In fact, the agent I ultimately signed with, I queried him on a Friday, and on Monday he offered me rep after a call. He read the book over the weekend. So, so first and foremost, like you have to have a great book. And great, is a subjective term, but like you have to have a book that appeals to the Big 5 publishing marketplace, like a book that people think can sell, even if it doesn't, it doesn't have to sell millions of copies, but like the publishing house has to believe there's a market for it. And the literary agent has to believe that the publishing house believes there's a market for it. And so you can have a great ass book and not get an agent if the agents don't think the market wants it. And so that's another hard reality that authors have to kind of accept when they're going in the querying. And it is a bit of a platitude, but like it might have nothing to do with your book. Your book might be really good, and it's just the marketplace doesn't want it right now. And that's so that's just a painful truth that we all are grappling with when you try to go the traditional publishing route. So you go and you query these agents. It's really a lottery ticket. And if you get the agent, then the agent signs with you an offer of rep. You sign a little contract. And then the agent, depending on the kind of nature of your manuscript and the personality of the agent, you might revise your book a little bit with them before you even go to the publishing house. Because the agent might say, like, for example, with my agent, he said, hey, your book's awesome. It's really great. I think it needs one more pass to get it where like we will not get any rejections. Like there's no way they can say they can turn it away. And so we did a pretty light revision. Like it was pretty modest. And so I thought I appreciated him. He used to be an editor at a Big Five house, so like I trusted his judgment. Some agents have editing experience, some don't. You have to look at their individual backgrounds. So with my agent, we did a quick revision. We turned it on like a month. He took it out into the marketplace. He targeted, these are the 15 editors we want to go after. And then he queries it to the publishing houses on my behalf. And then they decide to bite or not. And one of the most devastating things you'll see from like these, sometimes you see authors that are truly demoralized or even radicalized against traditional publishing, is when they spend all this time fighting through the horde of authors to get the literary agent. And then the agent takes the book to the publishing house, and then the publishing houses still don't want it. And I can only imagine how devastating that must be. And for me, luckily, people were interested in leverage at the publishing level. And so I was able to get a deal for the book. At that point, you sign a contract, and then, I don't know how much you want me to go in the weeds on this, but basically then you work with the publishing house over the next, 1 to 3 years to basically edit the book, design the cover of the book, go out and get blurbs. The internal sales team will go start marketing the book to like Barnes & Noble and Amazon and the independent bookstores that they think are going to be interested in this. You're going to send it to trade publications for reviews like Kirkus, Publishers Weekly, and Book List. You're going to send it to the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times and the Economist, anywhere that still reviews books. Book review coverage used to be a huge thing. Now it's not. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to try to still get whatever you can in that front. And then probably most importantly nowadays, you're going to work with your publishing, publicity, and marketing team to get in front of influencers on Book Talk or on Instagram and get it in the hands of these people that have built a following as being book experts at like kind of micro level. And if you can get in front of them, like they can make or break your book, and so right now what I'm doing on that front is I actually started a kind of a gonzo TikTok marketing campaign where I'm doing some comedy bits on TikTok and I'm playing a character. I'm not being Amran. I'm being a guy who is a fake guy who used to be Amran's old boss. And he's just, a hedge fund shitbag. And he's saying all these horrible things about me and about the book. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I've actually got on the radar of a couple of influencers that are then now taking a look at the book. And so, there's little tools you got to play and tricks you got to play to kind of get people to pay attention to you, because it's really, really competitive out there. So that's a bit of a, there's hours and hours more we could talk about this, but that's about as concise as I can make it. And certainly we can probe any part of that's still interesting.
No, that was excellent. That's exactly what I was looking for. Yeah. So Tristan, you got something you want to?
No, I was just sitting back enjoying, because like I said, again, as I said earlier, I like to learn on this podcast, and anybody who can explain a process that I don't understand or that I don't know, I enjoy that type of thing. But before we wrap it up here today, Mr. Gowani, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media or find your books?
Yeah, so my home base of operations is my website, amrangowani.com. Like I said, Leverage is my first book. It's coming out on August 19th, depending on when you hear this. It may or may not be for sale. And you can pre-order if it's before then, or you can buy it in the stores if it's out already. And so, and all the major retailers are carrying it: Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, Books A Million. And, local indies are going to be carrying it. And if they don't have it in stock in your store, you can always go and ask them for, to buy a copy for you. So basically it's going to be available wherever books are sold. And I've experimented a lot with social media over the years. Right now I'm active on TikTok, where I'm doing my Gonzo campaign I just mentioned. I've had a LinkedIn. It's my oldest existing account because I was a corporate scumbag for so long. So you can always find me there. And I dabble in Blue Sky and Substack, but I've kind of moved away from those over time. Like I'm really enjoying my TikTok. And so TikTok, LinkedIn, and then my newsletter that's run through my website are kind of the primary places to find me.
So you said you were an old wrestling fan, right?
Mm-hmm. $1
Million Man or IRS? Which one?
I'll take Ted DiBiase, baby, the $1 Million Man.
All right, there you go.
Yeah.
Although IRS getting dragged around by that little red necktie every once in a while, that was fantastic.
No, he was good. He was good. But I mean, I remember I was a kid in the early '80s, and we know Hulkster just passed away, and I know he had his personality defects, but he was a childhood hero for all of us. And I remember those matches with the $1 Million Man and Jake the Snake and all those when I was a kid. So they were influential. So
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
easily
well-
separate the character from the man. That's
Yeah.
not hard for me to do. Maybe it's from being in the business for 25 years. I don't know, but it's really easy for me to separate people from their characters. So Hulk Hogan as a character was inspirational. Terry Bollea, he had some flaws.
yeah, and that's life, man. To separate the art from the artist. I think it's a challenge, but I think you got to do it, because if you really were going to say, this person was a bad person and therefore I'm not going to consume their art, well, there's not a lot of art left.
Yeah.
People are complex, and some of them are
Yeah.
just objectively bad.
I was only lucky enough to see the Hulkster live one time in my life, and it was like a NyQuil dream. Like I had the announcers, Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler over here, Hulk in the ring, and then Jesse Jackson sitting to the left of me. It was kind of like a weird, like everywhere I looked, I'm like, wait, what's happening?
Yeah,
Wrestling
that's-
fever dream.
So the way we like to wrap things up here, and I say this all the time, and so you may have heard it, we're not very good podcasters and we don't know how to end it. So if you don't know how to do something, steal from someone who's already perfected it, and that's what we did. So to honor the questionnaire that was invented by Mr. Bernard Pivot and perfected by James Lipton, we're going to start off and we're going to ask you, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word. So I will just at the outset, I will say that the Wall Street analyst in me, I listened to some episodes and I did my homework. So I have come with stock answers. So I hope that doesn't
He
kill the
is
spirit.
prepared.
I hope that doesn't kill the spirit of the
Perfect.
podcast. But
No.
I thought about this.
Nope.
There's a lot of great words. One of my favorites is apocryphal,
Ooh.
because it's a fancy word, but it also kind of just means that everything's bullshit. And I think that kind of, makes a lot of sense to me. So I like that word, apocryphal.
I like that.
I'm
That's
glad
good.
you told us what it meant, because I was about to give you the spelling bee gimmick and be like, can you use it in a sentence, please?
Yeah.
What is your least favorite word?
Innovation, because it's just a word that over promises and under delivers every time.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of nature, like river flowing, wind in the trees, birds chirping. Just I can't get enough.
On the opposite side of that, what sound or noise do you hate?
People chewing with their mouth open, like visceral violence in my blood when it happens.
And
I'm with you there, 100%.
you've had several in your lifetime already, so you may have already covered this personally, but what profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Sports broadcaster. So I have an uncanny ability when we're watching any sporting event in any sport, even if I never played it, to say the exact same thing that the announcer says, 3 seconds later. And I think that might have been a calling of mine that I just missed.
What profession other than your own would you not like to attempt?
Coal miner. Just nothing good about mining coal, man. This is the 21st century. We need to do better.
No. Yes.
Creatively, what turns you on?
I'd say cleverness, like when something wows me, when something really surprises me with its intellectual power, not necessarily, a lot of things can surprise, and it's not always in a good way, but when something can really wow me with like a quick turn of phrase or something really clever, like that always gets me excited.
In the same vein, what turns you off?
Closed-mindedness, like people that just aren't willing to entertain the gray zones. Like, life is complicated. People are complex. Most things can't be reduced. And so if you're closed-minded in any direction, I'm just not going to find that compelling.
And now my favorite one. What is your favorite curse word?
It's hard to not say fuck, because it's the most versatile word we
Right.
have in English. But I'll go with motherfucker, because I think a good motherfucker has a really a nice pitch and a good tone and can really set the mood. You're just like, motherfucker. Like that always works for me.
Millions of
mention, there's
Samuel
not
L.
too many-
Jackson fans agree.
And there's not too many compound cuss words, so you got to enjoy that one. And
Make those
finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Yeah, I want him to explain why, if he was omniscient and all-knowing and all-powerful, like he let the state of the world get into this, mess. I want an explanation.
We want answers, damn it.
Yeah.
We want answers.